Guys, in this Design With Me session, we're going to be in Foundry, and I'm going to show you how to use some of these modular pieces to make a village. We're going to work on an elf village, a street in that village, and this can really apply to any city that you want to make. We're going to start by making a special scene with no padding, because we're going to use a special background for it, one that you've seen in another release in the past. I'm using Ripper's Dig Down module here. I find if you go to your modules folder and you just search, you can find pretty much everything, all of my stuff and anything else that you have in your module folders. I'm using Quick Scale to grab one of the backgrounds from the Endless Road release, because I'm not going to make a scrolling road here, but I do want to use it for a street, right? And I'm going to make a street in an elf village here. So I've scaled it up nice and large. I'm going to work with 3 levels here, kind of 0 through 9, 10 through 19, and 20 through 29. And all I'm going to do is look for roof. So I've typed in roof in Dig Down, and I'm scrolling down to the new Elvish roofs. These are really just great roofs in general. You can use them for really any kind of medieval setting. And you've got some slightly higher end ones here with some sort of a concrete finish and some with a stone finish. They're all colorable, but we're just going to drag them out right now. And we're dragging them out on roofs. So you can see that I've got my roof toggle on in levels, and I'm putting it just as a roof to the first level here. We're going to have kind of 3 layers of levels, and we're going to drop them in and position them around however we want. Because these aren't going to be real buildings, these are just facades of buildings, we can put them at really any angle. They don't have to be explorable in the angles that they're in, so it makes it really nice and organic as far as making a believable street out of it. And you can see I've got some base roofs here that are easy to work with, and then you can put embellishments on them. One thing, if you don't have padding, you do have to make sure that the tile fits entirely within the scene or it won't drop. So if you find yourself struggling, it has to have some padding or a scene to drop into. So you might have to make it smaller by increasing the DPI temporarily. And then, of course, I'm just using Quick Scale to make these things larger or smaller. I'm putting in some sub-roofs here just because when you look at architecture, you often have sort of sub-roofs and main roofs. You can see I'm just tucking them under in a semi-believable way. And I just have a lot of different shapes to play with. Here's some gables that we can play with. And if we change the horizontal or vertical value to a negative, we can make sure that the light, the shadow, shows up on the correct side. So I'm generally trying to make sure that my light is showing up on the right side. You don't have to get it exact, but it just helps for the unconscious eye to believe the scene here. Just making these gables negative values so that they look relatively right. And you can see how quickly this scene is coming together. That's how nice it is to be able to work with these roofs. And we're going to color them in a second, which is going to create just some instant variability. So once you think you have the right layout, maybe another subroof in here, we'll start to go and build in the next one. I'm just moving them up and down. Again, they're all toggled roof on with the levels UI up there in the top right corner. And now I'm looking up awning, and there's some awnings here. They're all tintable awnings. They come in light colored, but you can give them any color that you want. And it's just helpful for maybe designating there might be a door to a particular place, or maybe it's a shop. Just using the core Foundry tinting function here. We're going to use the Dungeon Draft coloring function here in a second. And that's looking pretty good. Look, it's a pretty believable town. And now we're going to use the Dungeon Draft filter, and we're going to make that roof blue. I'm just holding down Shift while I select all those tiles, and I'm giving them a particular color. As long as you have the tile selected, it will attempt to change all of the red pixels to another color that you designate. For those of you who have been wanting to make city streets, these assets and this method makes it really, really fast. This is looking pretty good. I'll leave some of them red. You can see there's nothing underneath and there's nothing on top. Now we're at the level above. We still have roofs assigned. And now I've looked up a roof again, and I'm just looking at what roof options are available, and it looks like there is a tree that is also a roof. This went with the one of the nature towers that came out. It was one of the variants of the Clockwork Tower. And it's got some nice lights embedded in the trees. And I think for an Elvish town, that makes perfect sense to me. So I'm just taking the same asset and I'm rotating it around so you don't see the same side in any particular place. I could also resize these and kind of doubling them up. The idea is these trees are going to be sitting above the general roof line. This is sort of in a forest environment. And now I'm at the next level, the final level above, still the roof level. And I'm going to drag out some of the new assets. These are the Elvish dome. So if you just search dome, you can find these. And I want this dome to have two pieces to it. I'm going to give it a base, and I'm going to apply one of my new custom token magic effects here. You can get this in my nuts and bolts pack. And then I'm going to replicate that same tile. I'm going to take away the filter on it, so it has no special effect. I'm going to change it to the see-through version of it. And when I layer them on top of each other, it creates this really cool effect of this sort of magic tower. And the implication being that this might be an entrance to a magic shop or a mage's tower or something like that. I'm going to go grab some more pieces. Remember, all of these come in sort of a background and a foreground. If they're red, they're colorable. If they're white, they're tintable. And here I'm just kind of layering two on top of each other to get the motif that I want. I could really use any colors in this case. And now I've got 3 layers, and you can see them all stacked nicely on each other. And this is feeling pretty good. Now I'm going to select all of them, and I want them to never occlude. So I set them to never occlude, and that means my players can walk underneath the eaves, and all of these buildings stay the way that they are. Now I could delete one of these facade buildings, and I could put in a real building. Just drag in a real building from this huge portfolio that I've got. And but for right now, I'll just show you what it looks like to make them all facades. Now I am at layer 1 again, and now I'm going to start placing lights. I want these lights to occlude underneath all of the eaves, right? So when the lights go down, it'll give a really nice effect. And so I am giving these just a tag called street-light in case I want to manipulate these en masse later. I'll just give them a tag. And I'm creating just one, right? This becomes sort of a prototype, and then I'm just going to hit Control-C, and then I'm going to Control-V or copy and paste this to the other buildings. I'm just going to slightly tuck it under where I think maybe a door might be, just so I can see kind of the roof outlines. And then I'm going to go to the next layer above, and I'm going to put some more lights up here in case players are, this is a battle map, and they are battling above and below the roofs. I want some lighting to be above the roofs as well. And then I'm going to select all my lights and hit Shift-E, and then I'm going to randomize. You right-click that little button to the right, and you can randomize. The first one that comes up is the darkness threshold, so you want that to be 1 and 1. The second one that came up was the brightness threshold, and you can stop and go back and see what I did, but essentially you randomize when those lights are going to come off. Now, the problem is I only did it for the lights on the second level. If you do it on the lights on the first level, it would be more obvious, but it would make them come up at random intervals as the light comes down, because we want to also be able to play the scene at night. And let's just check it out. You can see it's a really nice effect. And if I go back in and change my randomization levels, those will all kind of tick on at different times. And now it works great. And so I'm going above and below just to see what it looks like above and below the roof line there. This is a pretty good start, and this took really just a few minutes to create the scene. So now we want to place our walls. We'll go down to our first layer, and I'm going to leave roofs on so I can see my walls are. And I'm going to try to draw the walls just behind where the eaves are so my players can still walk under them, but I don't want them getting lost under an entire empty roof. So I'm just kind of blocking these off. And you just sort of do this for the rest of the map, and that gives us a pretty good foundation for this map. Now, the idea with this map is we'll have players teleport into some of these buildings. So I can have these buildings be just an image. By the way, I'm going to drag some chimneys in here just for a little finishing. I'm dragging them in. I'm leaving my roof layer on so that when I drag them in, they get treated as roofs themselves. And they have control tokens because they're prefab, so I can just kind of drag the control token where I want the chimney to be. And you can see once you kind of play with your roof level, you can see that they become visible for players. Just a few of them, just to give it a little bit more sort of decor. These chimney pieces are actually in 2 components, and if you right-click, if you have multi-phase tiles and you right-click the smoke, there's actually an animated smoke version, in case you want animated smoke. These are some of the merchant wagons. These are dynamic. If you take off levels and you just drop them in, they should work just great as a first floor item. These you can double-click, and it'll dynamically change the contents of the wagon. So maybe you're selling some rugs and some artwork, or there's some wagons that have just general supplies or they're empty. They just put a few wagons around just to kind of show sort of a busy street. They all come with walls in them as well so that they can serve as sort of a tactical point of defense. There's going to be some melons. And this is already feeling pretty good. Now I'm going to look up a sign. And I'm going to put this sign around. I'm going to change some of the appearance of it. I'm going to make it white. I'm going to drop the opacity of that sign in the middle. But I want this to be a place where players can come up and just hover over that sign and see the name of the particular store that they might be standing in front of. Maybe I want this to be sort of a dynamic shopping environment, or I want them to hunt around and look for that magic shop. And this is just a way for me to do that. Here I might put a map of the town in the middle of this in case they want to walk up and interact with the map of the town. Maybe this leads them to more areas of the elf village, for example. And I've got some examples of how I've done town maps and teleports and things like that if you guys are interested. Now, because these are all facades and I'm going to have them work as teleports, I'm going to drop in just a regular tile. In this case, I'm going to use just a core Foundry tile. You can slow it down and see the path. It's under icons and then SVG. I'm going to pick a door tile. And basically, I'm just assigning the artwork to this tile. And this is going to be essentially a teleport. And I'm going to send it to 100 by 100 squares, or pixels per square. And now players will be able to see this. I'm going to leave this slightly visible. I'm going to drop its opacity, and I'm going to let players see that it exists. I'm going to control as the GM whether it's active or not, right? You can just right-click it and make it active or not. But I'm going to apply some Monk's Active Tiles automation here. And so any player who comes up and clicks it, I am going to give it the action of having a sound of a door open, and then it will teleport them. But I'm not going to have the teleport assigned anywhere. I'm just going to leave it generic. And what this is going to let me do is have control over how they explore this map, if I want it to be explorable at all. Of course, I can always delete all these. And then I can decide, okay, for this one, it's a magic shop. I want them to just go to a single screen that is the inside of a magic shop, right? And it's just an image. As if they're standing in there talking to the clerk. Whereas another one, maybe I want them to teleport into a home that's explorable and it might be a multi-level home, right? So this is really up to you, but it's an easy way to make all this work. And of course, I can use artwork from anywhere. So if there's an artist that's got a great shop image, or there's a map of a great weapon shop, I can use those separately in separate scenes and not have to worry about how I'm merging them all together in a single street. You can do this at a much larger scale too. Everything that you see now, I could have made this a very, very large scene and decrease the size of all these roofs and done a larger scale scene too. You just have to be careful about performance as you get bigger and bigger. And I'll just take that prototype teleport tile and I'll paste it in some more places. Notice I have the UI off for levels just because it forces certain functions and forces tiles to be foreground tiles and things like that. And I don't necessarily want that. And now I'm just turning everything off. And so if you use this map later, after I've designed it as the GM, just remember these are all off and you have to reactivate them if you want them to do anything. And this is feeling pretty good. Let's add some ambient sounds here. And in this case, I'm going to drop the sound level. I want this only to be active in the daytime. And let's use the medieval town loop. It's a pretty effective one just for bringing some life to a town. Notice it doesn't get constrained by walls and there's no volume easing. I want it to be just a just kind of a flat, same volume everywhere. And then at night, I want some crickets to play. So I'm just copying this. I'm changing the volume. I know the cricket sound is relatively low, so I'm increasing the volume of it. And also at night, I want some frogs to play as well, right? So I've got two overlapping night sounds. I'm going to drop the frogs because I know it's a little bit louder. I'm going to change when it comes on, so it's a little bit staggered. And one more sound that I'm going to add. This is one of the new Michael Gelfi loops. Yeah, I just love it. You'll hear it a lot in this release, right? And in this case, it's going to apply in the daytime. And then I'm going to apply this Elvish Embers and Clouds. This is just a FX Master preset that I built. And here we can hear it all come together. And we've got, in pretty short order, a pretty great town with lots of flexibility. It can be used for battles. It can be used for exploration. It can be used for a little bit of both. You can come in here and light this town on fire if you want to use some of those macros and capabilities I showed you last time. Right, we have fire tiles that we can place as roof tiles along all these roofs, and all of a sudden this thing is lit on fire. Oh, and here I'm just pasting. I changed the way that these work. I wanted it so that anybody could hover over it and see the name. And so I just copied it using Mass Edit and then pasted it using Mass Edit as well. It's just Shift C and Shift V. Unlike Control C and Control V, which we're used to, Mass Edit uses the Shift key. All right. Drop our lights, see how this feels at night. And I'm feeling pretty good with how this came together. You always want to test your scenes, walk through them as players. You also want to open up a incognito window and run through as a player that way. Here, I'm just going to show you, just with the time left, how you can add things to this. In this case, I looked up ladder, and I'm just going to put a ladder here, and that might be a way for players to get up to the next floor. I can spam that ladder in other places. I can make it smart. Here, I'm going to drop in a plot hook. This is from the last release as well. But this idea that you just drop these little Easter eggs into your scenes, things to discover. In this case, right now it's a body, but I'm going to change it to a hole. And maybe this hole is a secret access point into what would otherwise be a fortified place. It's got Monk's Active tiles, so your players can discover it. They can click on it, or you can click on it as a GM if you want to control that experience. And you can just right-click it and turn it into a treasure if you want to. I'm going to give this a little bit of tinting so it sort of blends into its environment a little bit more. But that's it. I can make it larger or smaller. Now I've got a little plot hook, something interesting in the map that I want my players to discover. You can always come in and, again, delete it and come up with something else. And just to show you again, like, look, I'm just looking up the word pit or hole. And I've just got these holes. You can just drag them in. They can sit on any kind of terrain. And why would I do this? Well, maybe some giant worms erupted out of the ground, right? Or maybe they walked in and discovered that these are here. Or maybe you make these materialize as they're walking around, and all of a sudden they're in a battle, right? This is how you take these different tiles and you just create creative storylines, just getting inspiration from what you find in this set or from other sets. Maybe this, maybe this place is at war, and I look up fence here and I find all of these different embattlements that I can use, right? So maybe there's not a way through this town because it's got a barricade set up. And that's how easy it is to set up some storylines, and you use the assets themselves as your inspiration as a GM for how you want to make these, tie these maps into your story. And remember, you can always drop in real buildings. This is a apothecary from Abominable Rob, I believe. And I can drop it in. I may change its roof style to match mine, which I'll show you here in another video. But yeah, these don't all have to be facades, right? Here we've got a working building. So hopefully this was helpful to you guys and it helped you see how easy it is to build a town. And I hope you guys enjoy the release.